Hi, everybody. Good morning. This is Helen with One Structural and our divisions Retrofit 1, ADU 1, and Balcony 1. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is our first webinar of the year, so I'm very excited to sort of see everyone, even though I can't really see any of you. But I see which eyes are watching me at least. A little creepy, but it's okay. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Today we are going to go over our division Balcony 1, the SB721 and SB326 inspections and the requirements, because we've hit 2024. This is your last year to take care of it. It's already January 17th, so half of January is already done. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will get to them as soon as I stop sharing the presentation. We will be going over today both SB721 and SB326, the requirements, the inspection process, even getting a quote, how to help you compare, how we do our quotes, how we do our inspections, what's in your subsequent report, what do you do if you need repairs, tentative costs, things like that. So I'm going to be sharing my screen with our presentation. That should hopefully cover everything generally and briefly. If you have any further questions, again, please add it to the chat. And then I'll also, of course, put our contact info if you do need a free quote or have any questions. So hopefully everybody can see this. Balcony 1, SB721 and SB326, how to comply. Background info again, in case you are new here or this is the first time you're hearing about these requirements. So even though this might be new to you, it actually took effect in 2019. So it's been 5 years already. And considering that the first deadline is after 6 years, that is why we are already at the very tail end of the first compliance period. We get a lot of questions regarding, do you think there are going to be any extensions? Again, I have no idea, but personally, I don't think there will be. Maybe like a temporary grace period or something like that. But because this is a recurring deadline every 6 years for apartments, every 9 years for HOAs, I really don't see them extending the deadline. Maybe they will once. I don't know. I doubt it. You've had plenty of time at this point since 2019 to take care of this. So personally, I don't see how extending it is going to go hand in hand with this recurring deadline, but who knows? Just my opinion based on knowing the city planning departments and so forth. So again, took effect in 2019. This, of course, was based after the accident in Berkeley, where a balcony similar to the one on this screen had a lot of college students on it, just having a good time. But unfortunately, it collapsed and a lot of the students died. And it was found to be due to, I believe, some structural impairments, water damage, stuff like that with that element. So because of that, that is why the state, this is a state requirement. That is why the state is requiring all buildings with 3 or more units that have these exterior elevated elements must get them inspected every 6 or 9 years, depending on the type of building it is. In order to be subject to these requirements, the elements have to be at least 6 feet or higher from the ground, meant for human load. And just think about it, can it collapse or cause injury? If your balcony is recessed and sits above dwelling, it's exempt. If you have a stairway or a walkway that's made out of steel or concrete, it is also exempt. This applies to wood framed, cantilevered, protruding, nothing underneath type of elements that could collapse and hurt somebody. So those are the elements subjected to the law. And it's not just balconies, it is walkways. So a lot of buildings may not have any balconies at all, but you have those internal courtyards with walkways that connect to all of the doorways and entryways for the units. Those are subject to the requirements. Landings, even handrails associated, waterproofing elements, and of course the wood framing, the structural components in between. So what do I have to do basically? So if you are a landlord, apartment building owner, or a condo owner, part of an HOA, all of this applies to you. You have to get some quotes, of course, and shop around. That can take some time. Make sure the company that you are getting a quote from even has the correct license. So there are some differences between the apartment building requirement and the HOA condo requirement. But in general, you have to be an engineer, an architect, a contractor with certain amount of experience in order to qualify. There are other types of licenses, I believe, that are on some ballots or something like that right now. I'm not too sure about the potential ones that could be, but for now, to be safe, engineer, architect, contractor. For condos and HOAs, the engineer type has to be a structural engineer or an architect. Can't only be a civil engineer. Has to either be a structural engineer or an architect in that stamps your inspection, does the inspection. So the steps are: get a quote. Once you choose a properly licensed company, you schedule the actual inspection. Once the inspection is done, which can take anywhere between 1 day, half a day, if it's a smaller building, to a week, if you're a large HOA community. Once that is finished, the inspector will let you know, of course, how it went, if there were any major red flags, anything that needs to have access be restricted immediately, because that is kind of the first step. If there is an extreme hazard, imminent danger, something like that, restrict access. If everything was okay, maybe just some waterproofing or nothing at all, you just wait basically to receive your detailed report. Our reports and other reports that we've seen luckily have been sort of looking the same. It will basically have all of the evidence from that inspection, any photos that we took, endoscopic camera views that we took of the inside, infrared readings, moisture readings, stuff like that will all be there for every element that was inspected. It'll be rated, of course, too. We will be checking the top decking for your waterproofings, your flashings, any cracks, anything corroded or deteriorating from the top. We will also be inspecting the underside, just visually looking for staining. That's usually a big indication of water intrusion. The damage would have to be determined through further steps. We do boreholes as well, which I think I'm going to get into when we do find any of those kind of red flags. We do boreholes on the underside with endoscopic cameras to see inside. So all of that is in your report. And then, of course, once you're done, if you do need any repairs or further testing to see the extent of the repair needed, we would provide our suggestion and additional quotes at that time. If everything was sound, you're good to go. Just keep your report for a minimum of 2 cycles. So these are the differences between SB721, which is for apartment buildings, and SB326 for HOAs condos. SB721, again, still applies 3+ units. One of the biggest differences is that only 15% of each type of element must get inspected. That's 15% of the balconies, 15% of the linear feet of your walkways, and so forth. And this inspection is required every 6 years. The first inspection for both 326 and 721, though, are all the same deadline, January 1st, 2025. So really, that's at the end of this year for both bills. For 326, condos and HOAs still applies to 3+ units. But in this case, basically all elements must get inspected. And that's because the law states that there has to be, from the inspector, a 95% certainty with this inspection. So basically all of your elements are getting inspected. The other difference is that after the first deadline, condos and HOAs have every 9 years to get inspected. So you have a little bit more of a buffer because of how thorough the SB326 inspection has to be compared to 721. To recap the steps, and to add how we do our quote. So let's say you give us a call or you email us, you want a quote. We normally would send our technician out to do what we call an element count, because your quote is based on, at least our quotes are accurate, and they are based on the number of elements that you have or linear feet of walkways. We don't do it based on units. because there's usually discrepancy. It's very rarely just one balcony to one unit, and that's all the building has. Nor do we like to do change orders and say, oh, we only did it based on units, but once you signed and we went out there, we found out that you had like 200 linear feet of a walkway, you're going to have to owe us more. We never do that. Unfortunately, we have heard many companies who do. So be wary of companies that will just do it based on the unit count and send you a bid, and the bid doesn't have anything about your walkways, landings, anything like that too, that are part of the bill. So we will, for larger buildings, usually maybe over 10 or 15 units, we send our technician out to do that element count. That is how we ensure that you have an accurate proposal with little to no change orders at all. So everything's accurate. Review your quote, of course. We're happy to compare with other proposals. You can always redact the info if you want us to check out another one, and we will objectively point out where discrepancies are. Maybe they're just doing it a different way, because unfortunately the law is a little bit sort of ambiguous for some areas, but there's also a lot of black and white areas too that we definitely follow. Our principal is not only the licensed contractor, but he's also a practicing attorney. So he understands the law quite well and knows exactly what to do for these inspections. So when you're ready, you schedule the inspection. A lot of people get confused. They think that our element count is the inspection, and then they freak out that why does the inspection cost money? Because it's a service and it's a thorough inspection. Only our element counts are complimentary, and that's to give you an accurate free quote. But your actual inspection, of course, it costs money because we're sending a crew out there to thoroughly do your inspection for the property. Once completed, you wait about 45 to 60 days for your detailed report. And then again, if any further testing or repairs are needed, that is separate. What's in the report? Details about each element inspected, recommendations, expected future performance, and of course, we identify if there is anything of high risk to your tenants or residents, as well as make suggestions if a walkway or a balcony needs to have access restricted as a step one. But we would let you know that right after the inspection instead of making you wait for the report. If there are no high risks, just keep your report for a minimum of 2 cycles. Again, that first deadline's coming up. And again, just keep it for a minimum of 2 cycles. If there are any like minor repairs needed, like waterproofing, decking, or anything like that, we would give you a quote for that as well. And that is something that we at least recommend just for maintenance. It'll extend the life of your elements, and it will reduce the risk of any high hazard elements down the road for your subsequent inspections. As mentioned, these are the allowed or permitted inspectors that can do the inspection: SB721, civil or structural engineer, a licensed B general, a building inspector, C5 framing. They all have to have a certain amount of experience attached to each one. For SB326, it has to be either a structural engineer or architect, cannot be a civil engineer. Architect is completely fine. Another big question we get is, especially when an HOA or a landlord knows that there is a specific balcony with a lot of staining, cracks, maybe it's even kind of bumpy when you walk on it, or it's like angled now and just not in good condition. They ask, okay, so what do I do if I do need a repair? Am I under any deadline? So only SB 721 apartment buildings are under certain timelines in order to get these repairs done. 120 days to pull the permit, because I believe almost all multifamily repairs you need to pull a permit for. So you have 120 days to do that, and then another 120 days to complete the repair. So it gives you plenty of time. And if you're restricting access and making sure your tenants or residents are safe and you're complying to this, you're fine. For SB 326, there is technically no repair obligation, but we do have to report any immediate threat to code enforcement. You're expected to work on them, but there is no timeline for other repairs that are needed. That's all as far as the slides go. With regards to pricing, our pricing starts at about $1,500 for the inspection and report, and it goes up again because it is based on the number of elements you have, linear feet of walkways. How we do the walkways, let's say you have 100 linear feet, we would break that up into 15 linear feet in order to get the individual elements for that walkway. And again, the main difference is SB721, 15% of each type have to get inspected, whereas SB326, practically all elements have to get inspected. Our boreholes that we do, because I know I briefly mentioned that, they are done on the underside of the element. It's about 2 inches in diameter. An endoscopic camera goes inside of the borehole, and that allows us to actually see the structural elements inside, the joists and the wood framing. Because let's say we did detect a lot of water damage, we can't just say the entire balcony needs to go, or just assume it was in one area. This just allows us to get a really precise look, see if there are any structural elements damaged and to what extent. If we do see a lot of damage there, we would then recommend things like destructive testing that allows us to open up a bigger area to see really the extent of the damage to that element and be able to prepare an accurate repair bid if needed. If the DT destructive testing showed that it was just one local area, we would just give our recommendations based on that, and you're free to go with whomever you'd like. You're not obligated to go with the inspector for the repair. And that reminds me of another question that I get. Some people are recalling when the bill was first passed in 2019, it did say that the inspector cannot do your repairs. However, that was very quickly revised and amended. So it does allow the inspector to do the repairs. But just take a look, because we don't obligate you to work with us afterwards. Of course, we hope you do, but those are completely separate steps. So you are allowed, obviously, to get other quotes when the inspection is done and you get your report if you want to shop around for the repair or get second opinions and stuff like that. So that about does it today for our Balcony1 webinar. Again, deadline is approaching January 1st, 2025. So think of that as the end of 2024. The reason I keep saying that is people keep hearing 2025 and they think they have till the end of next year. No, you have till the end of this year, basically, because by January 1st, the inspection needs to be completed. I will now put, here, I'll put my information in the box. In case you would like to email or call our office. Of course, our other divisions, ADU1 and Retrofit1, if you need those at the same time, happy to help. We do offer package deals for the balcony inspections when doing 2 or 3 or more properties. If you have a portfolio or multiple properties, we definitely help with that. I don't know why the phone number didn't appear. I will send it again. It's not appearing on my end. I will just announce it. Our general line is 818-996-6245. I'm not sure if it sent to you guys, but that is my email in case you do need our contact info, have any questions. Again, free quotes. We are fully licensed to do the inspections and repairs if needed. So yeah, give us a call, email us. And as explained, the entire process for you guys, getting quotes, picking a company, scheduling your inspection, getting your report takes several months. So now is the time to do it before you're put on a very long wait list, since again, this applies to almost every single multifamily property in the entire state. So don't get left behind. Don't be left liable for any injuries or even liable for costs if something were to happen that could have been easily preventable. So thank you, everybody. I'm Helen with One Structural, and this was our Balcony1 webinar on SB721 and SB326. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.